Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky and a special guest as we break down the Lakers rotation, the Anthony Davis extension, and much, much more. Aaron Larsuel coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends if the Lakers drop news, Aaron, on Friday, as they did.
The Lakers with the Friday news dump.
The Friday extension, $186 million news dump. We should all be so lucky.
Yeah.
So the Lakers did that, but sometimes on weekends. But no matter how you get your podcast, where you get your podcast, it's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube, over 20,000 subscribers strong. Right? We just passed the 20,000 subscriber milestone.
Okay. Right.
Very excited about that. So love the support the channel is getting. And it's a great place to leave us questions, talk to each other, and all of that. I mentioned last week, we mentioned that Andy would be out of town this week, which is fine because, frankly, I think we've done better.
I don't like him anyway.
I think we've found not just an adequate substitute, but a superior substitute for at least one show.
Yet to be determined.
We'll see. We'll see how this goes.
That's very kind of you. But I think in the intro you called me a special guest, which I appreciate. But that means that we should have some conversations offline. If I am a special guest, we're digging the bottom of the barrel at this point.
You are a very popular man and a very sought after host. You appear on many other people's podcasts.
That's true. Every time I'm asked. I think the last time I was on your show with your brother, who is not presently here, was during the pandemic, where you both were taken aback by the fact that I actually have hair. So I was going to wear a hat today, but I had hair.
It is true. I had no idea.
Yeah,
because for so long it was just you were kind of clean.
And then the pandemic, a lot of us, those of us that were capable, grew some hair.
That was mean. That was a very mean thing to say.
It was.
He's the host of All Access Lakers on Playback and the official Lakers podcast. That's how you know. Follow him on Twitter at Aaron Larsuel. We have a lot to cover because this is like one of those, like, we're in August and I've had a million conversations with Andy about, what the Lakers have been doing, but it's fun to do with other people. Like, now I got to find out what other people think about this offseason. And so we're going to do that. We're going to talk some sports book numbers, our friends over. And I should let people know, by the way, that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And if you go to the FanDuel Sportsbook, they've got all the NBA futures lined up. Are you a gambler? Are you a sports gambler? I am not. And it's not like some sort of
well, this is going to be interesting. Yes.
It's not like I'm opposed to it. I've never really.
No, yes, I very much am. But I am contractually forbidden from gambling on NBA games.
That's right.
At the times in my life where I have not worked in the NBA, which is not a lot of my adult life, but then I very much enjoy betting on NBA games. But yeah, college basketball, college football, the NFL.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure the FanDuel Sportsbook has a robust futures section for the NFL. So
they do
head over there, Aaron, and see what you can do. But let's start with AD. We mentioned the news dump. I find Anthony Davis completely fascinating at this point.
Okay.
Because let's say, what was your reaction both to the extension talk, like the Lakers, as soon as they're able, are going to figure this out with Anthony Davis, no questions asked, max extension that will keep him here essentially for 5 years. And that was sort of the end of the conversation. Then the contract comes, $186 million added on to the 2 years that he's already got, and it's a $250 million, whatever it is. What was your reaction to the whole sort of process here?
Okay, so I think this is important and instructive because when you mention the numbers, it feels like incalculable, right? And it is kind of just the way of the NBA now. So I think this is illustrative of a point that I'm saying we, like the royal we, not you and I specifically, but just a shift in the way people need to think about NBA contracts. And I don't think the raw dollar amount is that meaningful. I think people need to think of NBA contracts as a percentage of the salary cap. So what $50 million means in 2023 is not $50 million in 2026, right? It doesn't affect your team building. I understand for fans, it feels odd, right? And it feels like it's just another step forward from kind of divorcing those guys from reality, right? You know, some dude that's making 72 grand and struggling, and not struggling, but like, you know, getting after it to feed his family and whatever in LA,
you might be struggling. Yeah.
You know, versus, so in that case, when you hear 40 million and then 50 million and then 60 million and then 70 million,
the last two, just as for like context, the last 3 years of the AD extension the average is, I believe, 62 million a year.
So maybe, and that is
in theory.
That assumes that the cap is going to rise 10% each year, which is the most that contractually the most it can rise. And so that's why I think it's important to think of contracts, NBA contracts, as a percentage of the salary cap, right? Because Austin's going to make whatever 13.5 million average over the life of his 4 years, which is an absurd number. Although I'm going to play, I don't even know if it's Powerball or a Mega Million. I don't know. I think it's like 1.55 billion now, so I'm going to play it. But like 13 million for me and you and everybody else listening to this, 13.5 million a year is absurd. But as a function of team building and what it allows and what it restricts, etc., I think it's much more important to start thinking of these things, take the sticker shock out of it, and think of it as a percentage of the salary cap, because, you know, whatever, like, and it's going to keep going up. Dame had the highest one, and then Jaylen Brown had the highest contract in NBA history, you know, coming up, or that his extension that he's going to take. This happens all the time. And a few years ago, it was Mike Conley. Somebody is going to make $100 million a season
soon.
Coming up here.
Soon.
Yeah, coming up here. And it is absurd, right? It sounds absurd and is absurd. But I think, like, the difference between 50 million and 100 million, I don't know, man, whatever. So I just think it's important to think of these things as fans, as a percentage of the salary cap, because that is what matters for team building purposes.
So you mentioned Jaylen Brown, which I think is kind of an interesting one. And, you know, the Lakers fans and love any opportunity to wonder whether or not the Celtics are doing the right thing. And so, like, I look at the Jaylen Brown thing as at some point, the new restrictive rules are going to change. I think are going to change the way teams spend money. Not necessarily on young players like Brown, but older guys like the Bradley Beal contracts. And, you know, if AD were 31 or 32 going into this extension, as opposed to, you know, what is he, 29? I believe he is. God, these guys have been.
No, I think he's 30. I think he's 30.
Yeah, he's just turning 30. Yeah. But, like, you know, the other thing is, like, they've been in the league so long. They start at 18, 19, you know, 10 years in, but, you know, or Lillard, for example, who is an older 10-year veteran or 11-year veteran, because he was older when he came into the league.
That's why guys want to be one and done, to get to the next contract and the next contract
quicker.
Yeah.
There's the big, I think, line is because the new CBA is genuinely restrictive on what you can do to build a team. And, like, you know, the Celtics, because they have Jaylen Brown and then Tatum and all these other, you know, and Porzingis, whatever, like, the nenext couple of years, they can't do certain things. They don't have access to different contracts or can't make certain kinds of trades. I think the league has finally figured out how can we kind of make an actual salary cap here, because the Warriors are going to spend, they don't mind the luxury tax to a certain point. But what they do mind is team building. So they managed to combine the two of them. So what I want to ask you next is where Anthony Davis fits in, like, in this, like, what makes a good 65, 75, $85 million, like, what are the, because this is going to come up again for the Lakers. LeBron is going to eventually retire. The Lakers are going to try to replace him with a different max level guy. So what kind of player do you need to put into that slot? And is Anthony Davis one of those guys? So a compound question.
Oh, look at this.
Don't tell me the answer now.
I've had compound fractures. I haven't had compound questions.
Ouch. Both of those, that doesn't sound pleasant. We'll do that next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season, as we mentioned, about to kick off, and Aaron Larsuel is very interested. FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. This message, it might as well be talking directly to you, Aaron Larsuel, because right now when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time. I would stay away from the Rams. They win.
I'm a Niners guy, so I want to see my Niners. Although they're going to lose in the NFC Championship game as always.
Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel/Locked On and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/Locked On. And yeah, get going on that.
Take the Niners.
Who's going to be the quarterback?
There is the question, isn't it? The Niners have the best roster in the NFL for like the 5th time in 6 years and just don't have a quarterback. At least you and I have had this conversation, right? It's not on Twitter.
But it's not the kid who finished the season. It's going to be Trey Lance, right?
Nope.
No, it is going to be the dude who finished the season.
Who finished the season with a torn ulna or something in his elbow. Yeah.
Can he throw?
I mean, he certainly couldn't in the NFC Championship game when they tried to wheel his carcass back out there. And
that wasn't fair.
Yeah, it was not good. It is going to be Brock Purdy, supposedly. I would prefer Trey Lance, but it doesn't look like it.
I will refer you to the Locked On Niners host, and you guys can carry on this conversation.
It's going to not be good. So it's the couple things you were mentioning before the break about how the new second apron rules are going to kind of act as a hard cap, like as a real salary cap. And it's targeted at the Warriors and the Clippers. And I think we've seen some changes already. The Clippers let Eric Gordon go, cut Eric Gordon and, got rid of him for nothing as a salary move. Mm-hmm. And you've seen a bunch of other teams, Phoenix, who for a time looked like they were saying F you to the rules. And they're like, we're going to be over the second apron. So if we're going to be over the second apron, we're really going to be over the second apron. And then I think kind of thought differently about it and decided the only point guard on their roster, campaign, had to go for nothing. So I do think that is going to be a factor. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the percentage of the salary cap is going to be what is important, because the first apron, the tax, et cetera, the wherever the hard cap is, the second apron will all ascend with the salary cap. So you asked about Anthony Davis and where kind of he fits in that hierarchy and what you do, because, at some point LeBron's going to retire and then what do you do? And I think a lot of it has to do with opportunity cost. What else were the Lakers going to do, right? Are the Lakers not going to offer Anthony Davis everything?
If you play it out, you're right. Because if you play out the string, like, okay, he goes through this season, he either does or doesn't pick up his option, and you almost certainly end up in a situation where you're just going to try to sign him to another contract anyway. And so, short of a catastrophic injury this season,
and maybe even with a catastrophic injury, I mean, he's like, I personally would say he's somewhere between like the 5th and 12th best player in the NBA, like depending on your flavor, depending on the time of the year and how healthy everybody is and all of that, right? I don't think he's top 5, but I think he's right there. For me, he and LeBron are both probably 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there.
The day. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So if you have one of those guys and you can sign them for everything they can get, if you're not willing to give it to those guys, then what are you waiting for? Like, who are you giving that money to? So I think the other good part about it, and you said, or you were asking, like, who is this? Is it kind of win-win? Is it, good for everybody? I would say yes, but I think the deal slightly favors the Lakers because Anthony Davis could have opted out and then gotten a 5-year deal at even bigger money, and he would be a year older. And it would go a year longer. So I think this is a win for the Lakers. Not a huge win. It's not like, it's not the Austin Reeves contract, which is probably the best contract in the league at this point. But I do think it is a win for the Lakers, because if Anthony Davis had played out the year And let's say he had a season like last year. AD was really good last year, was out a bunch as AD has been recently. But if it was just a repeat of last year, AD is going to get a 5-year deal next year anywhere he wants. I understand guys now wanting the security. The other part of it is if this contract becomes an albatross and it's like, okay, he's not worth this deal in, whatever, as a 35-year-old in 2027 or whatever it is, well, then you have an expiring contract and then you use that to go get the next AD. So I do think in this new world of the NBA and with the new CBA, I do think it's a, it's not the Austin Reeves contract, but I do think it's a solid win for the Lakers. And I think the terms of it are slightly tilted towards the Lakers.
Because I agree with you, because they don't have to go 1 year longer. And for AD, it's like, the
it's 5 years from now and not 5 years starting next year, where he would also be a year older.
The prospect of injury is certainly there for Anthony Davis. I am of the mind that, if somebody's willing to give, he's already rich. I understand this, but if somebody's willing to give me 186, whatever that turns out to be now versus waiting for and he might still be able to get another 35, 40, 50 million after this deal is over at least. So, I mean, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to take it. One of the strangest things for me was the story about Russell Westbrook having an extension on the table for or a contract, I forget exactly what it was, for $260 million. And it took him a week and a half.
I'm good. Right. Yeah.
He was running errands. He was doing if somebody offered me that,
I got to run to Target right quick.
My agent texts me. I stop wherever I am. I sit down and I don't move until the contract is in front of me and I can do the e-signature.
Oh yeah, you get that Adobe. You get that. Yeah.
I could, if I get into my car, I could get into a car accident. If I try to cross the street, I could get hit by a bus. I'm not moving until I have signed the paper that says somebody's guaranteeing me 200 and something. I mean,
that's tough. I have been I have not seen an NBA contract signed in some years, but the last time I saw an NBA contract signed, it was not you. I mean, look, this was some years ago, so e-signature was not really a thing there. But you were signing copies in triplicate, and there were 15 signatures required on each thing. So it's thick. The NBA contract is thick.
These guys lead a different life than we do. But
do you remember the James Harden one where he was he went to when he got traded to Philly, and there was a big thing about whether he was going to extend, which is now interesting, or where he was going to pick up the year, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do it. I just I forgot to fax it in.
Right,
my agent forgot to send it in. Your agent forgot to send in 40 whatever million. I mean, okay, man."
I mean, again, these are things that you have when you already have 300 million in the bank or so. But Harden, perfect example of a guy who is no longer the automatic, oh, you have to give him an extent. Teams are no.
Clearly because he opted in.
But nobody wants to trade for him and with the idea that we have to give him 2 or 3 years at a max. Guys like that are, but if you're the Celtics, would you have been happy to give Jaylen Brown that supermax?
Yeah. I mean, again, what else are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Those two guys, him and Tatum, and it hasn't quite worked yet, but Lakers fans are not going to like this, and I don't like saying this, but over the next 5 years, the Celtics are the best bet of anybody to win a title in the next 5 years. Not anyone specifically, and it's really hard to win a title. So I would put their odds at under 50-50, but I think they're the best odds of anybody in the league.
It's pretty good
because
team.
They're just really damn good every single year, right? And the teams that go to a finals and go to the conference finals every single year, they break through eventually. Mm-hmm. No, I do think there are some systemic things. They haven't had a point guard. Tatum and Jaylen can't dribble in the playoffs. They turn the ball over all the time and can't dribble. But yeah, what else are you going to do? And again, it seems, he's going to make 70 million 4 years from now, which seems outrageous, and it is outrageous, but this is not real life. So NBA terms, that's a movable contract in NBA terms. And every team in the NBA, their entire goal is looking for 2 superstar two-way wings. And they've done the hard part.
Right.
You don't break that.
The reason I asked the question that way is because what I basically decided, the injury risk with Anthony Davis is real, but the injury risk with virtually every star player in the league who isn't, 23, and even some of the ones who are, go ask about LaMelo Ball, in Charlotte is there. I mean, Kevin Durant plays 48 games a year. You just hope it's the right 48.
Mm-hmm.
Is your guy that good? Like there, Bradley Beal, I think, is sort of the poster. I mean, Jaylen Brown, the Celtics fans were going nuts because they'll go, wait, he can't go to his left, and he doesn't do this, and he doesn't do that. I think he's really good, and he's his second or third team All NBA or whatever it is, and he's young, and he still should get at least a little bit better at certain things, and he's already really good. But the flaws that you have as one of those dudes who can lead you to a title becomes so. Anthony Davis, the injury risk is real, but the talent. Like, he is that good. Yeah. He is 100% unquestionably that good. And so
he was the best defensive player in the playoffs last season, and also averaged like 26, 13, and 2 blocks. Like,
So our friend, along those lines, so both of us agree with that. Like, the threshold needs to be, is your guy good enough? Mm-hmm. And if he is, you put up with the injury risk and you hope you can shepherd him through and keep him there. But AD fascinates me because the perception of him is, I think, very different than sort of his placement around the league. And our friend Darius Soriano wrote a really interesting story about this, which is up on Silver Screen Roll. And so I want to get into a little bit of that next. So my theory is that there is not a player in the league, and some criticism, Aaron, of Davis is totally legitimate. Mm-hmm. He sometimes has a little bit of that pow thing sometimes in him, where he allows the flow of a game to sort of remove him from it, where he doesn't assert himself aggressively into things in the way that. But probably I'm not sure there's a player in the league for whom the goalposts move more than for Anthony Davis.
He, at his best, and again, right, like, part of being a superstar is what is your peak, and part of being a superstar is how often can you access that peak, or 90% of it, whether that's through effort, whether that's through availability. All of that is fair, right? It's same question for Paul George, same question for Kawhi, same question now for LeBron, same question for KD. But I agree with you. Like, I think AD might be the player who's. I'll put it this way. Maybe it's the goalpost moving, or maybe I'll just put it a different way. I think AD is held to a standard that nobody else in the NBA is held to, because he is the player where we highlight the things that he didn't do things and forget this dude is so damn good. Like, what are we doing here? This is a big man who can guard basically anybody. He was the best defensive player in the NBA last year and averaged 26 points. Like, what are we doing here?
Is that a Laker thing, or an NBA coverage thing, a sports coverage thing, or all?
So I think
of
it's both. I think it's both.
Yeah.
It's both. It is how we cover, not you and I specifically, but it is how we cover the NBA. It's how X has done for the NBA. I don't want to get kicked off the platform. It is what X has done for the NBA, because we can't have nuance there, because you have a certain number of characters, so there can't be nuance.
And no sport thrives on Twitter X more than.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also it is a Lakers thing, right? Because there is going to be, the brightest lights are going to be shown on the Lakers and Lakers players, and Lakers Twitter is the biggest thing on NBA Twitter. And so Twitter is a divisive place. And so you're going to have Lakers Twitter people yelling in favor of Anthony Davis, except for the 10% of Lakers Twitter that can't stand Anthony Davis. The 90% of Lakers Twitter that is in favor of Anthony Davis and Lakers is going to be yelling at the rest of NBA Twitter. And so, yeah, I do think AD is held to a standard that nobody else is held to, but it's strange. It's really strange. I mean, look, frankly, like, I think AD could have done a better job getting himself ready to play at times, but AD, here's like the inside base. Here's what I will tell you. AD gives a bleep. I had to remember we can't say this here. AD cares.
Thank you, by the way. I appreciate
and AD wants to play. And yeah, like let's look at the Phoenix series in 21. AD couldn't walk, but he was out there trying to play. He lasted 2 or 3 minutes and had to go sit down again. But that, like, AD is soft notion and AD is always hurt and all that. Like, it's nonsense. AD cares. He doesn't necessarily seem like it. He's not like outwardly vocal about a lot of these things, but AD definitely cares. And I don't have any issue. Again, like, if you're not going to give those guys all the money, then who do you give all the money to?
Yeah.
I think it's a reasonable question. Can AD be the best player on a championship team? I think it's a fair question. But how many of those guys are there?
There are, like, good to go back to our first segment conversation, Andy. I think we tried to come up with the name. Like, how many names are there where you would just say, I am 1,000% confident in giving this guy $75 million a year? Like,
Yeah,
where you run, don't walk to give that.
Yeah.
It's Jokic.
Sure.
Giannis, probably, though he's a little more dinged up than I think people realize.
Yeah, but Giannis,
still,
yeah.
Andy suggested Anthony Edwards, who you, as a young player, you feel good about, but I wasn't there.
I need to see it a little bit first. I need to see him at least pretend to guard a little bit more.
Right. It's like, I think the instinct is there. The talent is obviously there. And the youth, like, if you want to invest in a player with upside and, where you want to get him in their prime, obviously he's the right age for that. But, Ja?
No, absolutely not.
I mean,
you do because you have to
him, but like,
you do because you have to, but I'm not running.
No. You're a little concerned. I think they're a little concerned in Memphis.
Steph, I still would.
I mean, so
KD, I still would.
4, 5, 6 guys.
LeBron, I still would.
But like with KD, you do it with the assumption that, like, there is a very good chance that if we have 4 years with this, 2 of them are going to be ruined by injury. Like, because that is. And so what I have thought with AD is that over time is like, what we both watched Odom play, and we're around, it was all that. And Lamar to me was the Powell. We were like, Lakers fans were like this with Powell. That focus on what they're not doing, what they don't do, obscures what they do. And it's all on a scale. Like, what Lamar didn't do, that was a bigger bucket of stuff than with Powell. And that is a slightly bigger bucket of stuff than Anthony Davis, a better player than Powell.
Yeah,
which is saying something, I think. I mean,
absolutely.
But like, if you're better than Pau Gasol, you're really good.
Well, so it's like, yeah, absolutely.
So the only thing I say is, I feel like I have over time been more not wildly, but more unfair to AD than I could, because his top end is so good. You feel like you want to see it all the time. Like, why can't I see this all the time?
Because NBA players are humans. And it just doesn't work that way.
That's not it.
I mean, they're superheroes, but they're humans, and it just doesn't work that way. So I think the interesting part about this is, and this speaks to AD's greatness, is that the higher up the ladder you go, the more we take for granted all the stuff that you're incredible at, and then just find things to pick at. It's kind of like when a college player, if you're good at college basketball. Football is different because you can't leave until 3 years. But a college basketball player, and scouts will tell you this all the time, and I am one of them, and I will tell you this. If you can go to the NBA after your first year, you better go. Because if you go back, we know what you can do, all the stuff that we liked. Now we're going to look for the other stuff. So now we're like, okay, all the good stuff, that has to happen 100% of the time, every single game. Now let's look for the thing you added, or let's start poking holes in all the other stuff. So I think the higher up the ladder you get, and this is true for AD, because as you said, he might be the most talented dude in the league. I mean, like, the combination of skills and physical talent and gifts and height and size, and he might be the most talented dude in the league. And so now we, again, not you and I specifically, but basketball intelligentsia or sort of intelligentsia in general, we just look for we're poking holes in it. We're looking for all the stuff. Oh, okay, why can't AD shoot anymore? Like all the stuff he needs to improve on without taking stock of this is like the 5th best dude in the league.
Yeah, I used to work with Max Kellerman at 710 ESPN,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the smartest things that I think he ever said, and if you ask Max, that is a very long list of things.
You're not wrong about that. I like
the
Max.
amount of
But you are not wrong about that.
He said. And by the way, and I like Max. We got along great. But like I called him out. It's like he was the master of the say something, the other person says, replies with something, and then he restates what the person just said to them in a way that makes it sound like he's saying the intelligent thing. And it's like, that is exactly what I just said.
I mean, that's kind of the embrace debate model, isn't it?
Right. You're right. But one of the smartest things I think he ever said about sports was like, it would be like, we look at great players and we think like LeBron or Kobe or whatever. Like Kobe had flaws. So like, wouldn't it be great if they were even greater than they are? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'd be like if Kobe were a little more of a team, had a better touch with his teammates and could maneuver those things better. Maybe shot selection was a little whatever it is.
I believe Kobe. I mean, some of this is because of how long he played, but I believe Kobe is first all time in assists for a shooting guard. But go ahead.
Good player.
Yeah, he's decent. He's pretty decent.
Quality player. Whatever it is. Every player has a thing that you can say,
absolutely.
I wish they could be better at that.
Yep.
Like, wouldn't it be great if they were a little greater than they are?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But that shouldn't cancel out how great they are. Like, let's focus on the 98% versus the 2%. And
we don't do that for
we don't do that. I think of all stars in the NBA, the guy who gets cheated on that equation most, and I've been guilty of this, is Anthony Davis. I've come to that.
I agree 100%. Right? He's like, why doesn't AD do? And everybody loves. There's all these folk heroes about, like, Robert Horry is a good example. I saw a Big Shot Bob the other day. Like, he was fine. Like, he didn't really do anything, but he's a folk hero, right? Like nobody like in our Sasha Vujic. I saw like in Sasha. We only think about the incredible shots that he makes, the free throws that he makes to clinch championships. Like the higher you get up the ladder, the more difficult it becomes, and the more you get dinged for not being an A+ at every single entity in an NBA floor.
All right, we covered about. I have a list.
You do
I have in front of me a list. We covered one thing on. So can you come back for another?
Let's run it back. Let's keep going.
Right, here's what I need you to do.
Okay.
Sit right where you are.
I can do that.
Don't move.
Okay.
Don't change clothes until tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, and we'll have Aaron Larsuel back tomorrow, and we'll do part 2 because I guess I got like 1,000 more things to cover. So
let's get it.
We'll do that next or tomorrow or something. Anyway, end of show.